Welcome to Triple Coverage, Bills fans. How's it going tonight? I am president of Built in Buffalo, Lance Nelson. To my right is co-founder Akeem Richins, and to my left is former Built in Buffalo member and now NBC Sports member Peter DiBiasi. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight? Peter, we'll start with you. What's going on a Friday night, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Always fun to come back and talk some Bills. My second time back since leaving. So the last time I was here was about like a month ago, Lance, I think, a month and a half
Yep.
ago, give or take. I enjoyed it. And I'm happy to be back. And I know it's July 12th, but there's always time. It's always fun to talk to Bills about the Bills, and there's always time to talk about the Bills.
Right on. Hey, Rich, how we doing tonight, brother?
Hey, Akeem Richins. If you don't know us by now, please get to know us. We are built in Buffalo. Yes, Peter's included. In my opinion, Peter, I love what Peter is doing right now, but in my mind, he's like a built in Buffalo lifer. And anytime he gets a chance to grace his presence on any show with the Built in Buffalo Network is much appreciated. Lance, I'm doing well, bro. I'm doing well.
Glad to hear it. And so tonight we got a pretty good episode lined up. I'm going to talk a little bit about some stats and metrics that the Bills can improve on, and a few that we hope stay the same. And then we're also going to do a couple of what ifs to kind of get some fun in there. I did see some shade. If you want to talk about kind of current something real quick, is Johnny Smith kind of came out and was talking about Buffalo just isn't a great place, and the wings aren't even that good. Did you guys see that? And what do you make of that? What he said there?
John Smith, in my opinion, is not a guy that moves the needle for me. So when he said it was a jab for the Buffalo Bills and our team, but it doesn't further move the needle with the hatred and the rivalry we have with the Miami Dolphins already. He just, adds minimal fuel to the fire. I'm not really going to be overly pressed with John Smith says, because he's not, unless he proves us wrong this year, he's not a player that we would think poses a threat for the Buffalo Bills on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm not really concerned with what he has to say.
No, yeah. Look, he's not a household name, kind of like what you're saying. He's also on he's not a great tight end. He hasn't been a great tight end in a while. And I always think it's weird when players of different teams take shots at like not just the city or the team, but like kind of like people living in the city almost, and like just what happens in the city. It's always funny to talk about like, oh, the wings, right? And I think that's a funny jab, saying that the wings are not that good. Look, that's all like fun and games, but I think it's always weird to take a shot at like basically saying who wants to live in Buffalo. I'm not personally from Buffalo. I've never lived in Buffalo, so I have no firsthand experience on living in Buffalo. But
Right.
I just think it's weird taking a shot at kind of like the city and almost like a personal attack on the city. Like if you tweet out, "Oh, the wings aren't that good," no one cares, right? Like if you go tweet out about Chicago, the deep dish pizza is overrated, or New York pizza is overrated. About we talk about the Jets and Giants, right? No one really cares. But when you take a personal shot, kind of at where people live, I think it's always a little bit of a weird thing. And I guess it's a news kind of news story just because it's July 12th and there's not much to talk about.
And especially a player that did not live up to the potential I think teams evaluated him as. And John Smith is a nice skill set to have. He can do a multitude of things in terms of play tight end, play that H back, be that fullback, run routes, block. But he hasn't done it to an elite level, or in my opinion, an adequate level. When you look at his contract and when he got paid, did he produce to the number of his contract? I think he failed to do so. So for him to want to take a shot or take a job at a city when he didn't live out to his full potential or thought his full potential would be is a definitely an interesting statement to say.
Yeah, I agree. He's not necessarily the most notable player, but his stature doesn't necessarily mean too much. It's a little bit weird to have someone come out and uh, maybe came for a visit or whatnot. I'm not really sure what his status was in Buffalo ever, and just saw something I saw, and I thought it was kind of odd for me more so than anything. I thought, but Yeah. All right. So we've got a couple of metrics here. I guess, I'll start. I think that, top three that we need to have, top three metrics we need to stay kind of the same or similar status from 2023 into 2024. The first one I have is total DVOA, at 24.1%, was third best in the league. So value over average metric is probably a little bit complicated to explain all at once here, but basically, if you're looking at the value over average, and the Bills were scoring enough points to keep them in the positive there, and the best in the league were the Niners, or no, excuse me, Baltimore at 45.5%. So the Bills were 24.1, and almost half of the DVOA that the Ravens put up. Obviously, the Ravens were 13-4 and had a great season, and the Bills had many games where they were really down. So even with those down games, though, still great. Had a good DVOA total overall. Like I said, good for third, and you want them to stay in the top five again this year, especially.
Yeah, all the analytics last year, Lance, were very high on the Bills, even when they were struggling, right? Like, I can't come off the top of my head, but like every week some guy would tweet like, this is what the Bills are expected, and it just they weren't living up to what the analytics were kind of saying. It also gave people hope that they could turn it around, and obviously they did eventually, and then obviously didn't end the way the Bills wanted to, but they won the division. So the Bills' expected stats or analytics or deep dive analytics going past like yards per game, interceptions, all that kind of stuff were always higher than I guess their record was, because at one point they were 6-6.
Right.
You want me to
Hey,
go?
Rich,
Is
what
that,
do
is
you
that okay?
Nah, go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
Okay. So I didn't go as analytical, but I went a simple stat for my one that we kind of want to stay the same or relatively, even if it gets a little better, it'd be great. But I did total yards per game on offense for the Bills. So last year, the Bills were fourth in the NFL in yards per game at 374.5 yards per game. They were only behind the Lions, who went to the NFC Championship game, the 49ers, who went to the Super Bowl, and then the Miami Dolphins, who like to score a lot of yards and then like to crash when the weather gets cold. But they were fourth behind those three teams. And my logic when I saw that stat, when you told me what we were going to be talking about tonight, was the fact that in order to score points, you got to be able to move the ball down the field, right? And when you move the ball down the field, you gain yards. It sounds kind of stupid. It sounds kind of silly, but it makes sense. So obviously you have to execute when you get in the red zone, and you have to punch it in. You have to score touchdowns. But if the Bills are able to be a top 5 total yards per game team, those opportunities are going to be there. And when those opportunities are there, a lot of the times the Bills have succeeded. So I think if you keep moving the ball down the field, long drives, giving yourself red zone opportunities throughout the game, I think that's kind of where the Bills want to be. So if they stay fourth in the NFL in yards per game, or top 5, or even if they get higher, I think it just means even more or even better offense for the Bills.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, the more yards they gain, the more points they can score. Hopefully,
Yeah.
the more opportunities they have at it.
Sounds stupid, but it makes sense.
Yeah, so that'll definitely be a benefit. Yeah. Hey, Rich, what do you think?
So I'm thinking, right? I'm going to put a conundrum in this, and I want to get y'all thoughts with my next sentiment. I'm going to go with first in sacks allowed. The Buffalo Bills offensive line allowed 24 sacks, which was first in the NFL, and that's obviously great. That's a great statistic. You want to keep guys off your franchise quarterback in Josh Allen. But at the same token, the Buffalo Bills offensive line was amongst the highest in the league in pressures allowed. Now the stats are misconstrued a little bit. I've seen stats where we gave up 211 pressures. I've seen stats where we gave up 143 pressures. But overall, we are in the top half of the league in giving up pressures as an offensive line. So my question to you, even though I like the fact that we only allowed 24 sacks as an offensive line, but what equates to the high pressure amount? Is it the offensive line that equates to that high pressure amount, or is it the fact that Josh Allen holds on to the ball and he's always trying to make a play happen? Is the results to the high pressure amount? I want to get y'all thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, right? Obviously, Josh is known for wanting to extend the play, never wants to really throw the ball away, and that's probably one of his main issues. But hey Rich, when you said the sacks and the Bills gave up the least amount of sacks, and then you said the pressure number, which the Bills gave up a good amount of pressures, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be Josh Allen holding the ball, but it also, I think it's the fact that they didn't give up a lot of sacks is the fact that Josh Allen exists. Is the reason is because of Josh Allen, because of his ability to scramble and make a play happen or run, right? Like if you have a quarterback like Matt Ryan, for example, who's not known for his legs, that sack total is probably higher, which is not a great thing if you think about it, right? That means the O-line is probably not as good as their sack numbers are. It's just Josh Allen is so good at evading pressure or just knowing when to run or just extending the plays, and it works out sometimes. So I think it's a weird kind of combination. I think it's a combination of, I think Josh Allen's very good at getting out of the pocket, trying to extend the play. That also causes a little bit of pressure because he holds the ball too long, but it also shows that maybe the line's not as good as maybe we think, and that if we had more of a stationary quarterback, that sack total would be much higher. We just have Josh Allen who's able to run.
Yeah, I think the offensive line definitely has their work cut out for them at times, given the fact that Allen likes to hold the ball. But overall, Allen also avoids pressure better than almost anybody else in the league. So even if they do let a guy off their block and or make a mistake early, Josh Allen is usually able to cover that with his athletic ability, obviously.
I like it. I like it. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. I just think about the, obviously the divisional game. Josh Allen's in the pocket. We want the pressure to hold up there. We want to be able to control the pressure there. Khalil Shakir was open in the end zone, and Josh Allen's hand was hit, and that pressure that was allowed ultimately, is responsible for winning the Kansas City Chiefs the ball game there. So even though I agree with both sentiments, I think that Josh Allen does hold on to the ball elongated at times because of the ability he has to scramble and get rid of the football. But at the same time, when we do need him to stand in the pocket and make that throw, we do need our offensive line to hold up.
Yeah, I agree. I think the offensive line did a heck of a job last year overall, and certainly, consistency and when you're in a one game, when you're in the playoffs, everything's so more magnified. So one mistake on one play by one guy. I mean, listen, it was Deion Dawkins, and he's really, he's one of the best offensive tackles in the league. And, on that play, he just, couldn't hold up long enough before he get driven back into Josh. And that play necessarily wasn't Josh Allen holding on to the ball. It was letting the play develop. So, yeah, he did hold on to the ball, but he had to let the play develop and let Shakir's route get to that point, because he could have had that short pass to Diggs on that route, on that play. And Diggs was standing there wide open. He could have thrown that anytime. And he chose to kind of wait till Khalil cleared the defender and then try to hit him. But at that point, was a little bit too late, obviously.
Yeah.
My second one is takeaways. Got to take the ball away. Last year they had 30 takeaways, was third in the league. I think you got to stay at least in the top 10 this year, and hopefully top 5 is obviously if you can be number 1 in that regard. You have Rasul Douglas, who can take the ball away, coming into a system where he's going to get familiarity. So I think takeaways are going to be important to remain the same for a metric for the Bills coming into 2023. That's kind of without saying, I think, for any team, any year.
Yeah, anytime you can give your offense, no matter how good your offense is, more opportunities, it's usually obviously successful. But it's also interesting to see, like, I didn't look this up, but takeaways when a team is in your own half, right? Like, how many times is a team driving on you or in the red zone or past midfield in field goal range, and you're taking the ball away, if it's a forced fumble or it's interception, because those are the ones that matter. And those are the ones, they all matter, right? Obviously, if the team's backed up and you pick it off, you give your team a short field, but preventing points that maybe when we were watching, you're like, okay, they're at least going to get 3 points here, maybe even 7, being able to take the ball away and not give up any points. I always think those, I didn't deep dive into that, but that's obviously an interesting kind of way to look at it in the sense of like preventing points at a crucial part of the time or part of the game.
Right on.
So I'll keep going with mine. So I had total interceptions as my stat. So I'll piggyback off Lance just to keep going with that. And then I'll do my third one after you guys go again. But I did total interceptions for the Bills. The Bills finished second last year in the NFL in total interceptions with 18. They were tied with a handful of teams. They were tied with the Ravens, Giants, Saints, and Browns. And they're only behind the 49ers, who obviously went to the Super Bowl, and the Bears, who I did not know were that good at taking the ball away through the air for a team that was not that good in general, the Chicago Bears. Maybe that's why so many people wanted Jalen Johnson last year at the trade deadline. But no, the Bills finished, like, kind of going off Lance, what you said with takeaways, but they finished 18 with 18 interceptions, tied for second. And now you have a full year of Rasul Douglas. Hopefully he's back healthy. Obviously Christian Bedford another year. Kyer Elam, like, does he finally break out, or does he give you something? And then obviously a different safety room with obviously Taylor Rapp returning, but it's Mike Edwards who's new, and then it's obviously Cole Bishop who's very new as a rookie. So a little bit of a different look in the secondary, especially at the safety position. But one thing Sean McDermott is known for, and we've been accustomed to known from him, is that his secondary always plays very well, right? Like, that's what they're known for, especially in the regular season. The playoffs, it's been very hit or miss, obviously, because just Patrick Mahomes exists, and he makes a lot of secondaries look very average. But if the Bills are able to keep obviously forcing quarterbacks into bad passes, this is also a defensive line stat as well, the interceptions, just because you're rushing a quarterback, you're putting pressure on the quarterback, he's making a bad throw, all that kind of stuff. But if the Bills are able to be a top 5 team in total interceptions again, I think it bodes well for this defense, and it bodes well for this Bills team.
Yeah, I like it a lot, and I couldn't agree more. You want to be able to take the ball away. When you take the ball away, you provide Josh Allen more opportunities, and when Josh Allen has more opportunities, good things are bound to happen. And I'm going to piggyback off that a little bit, and I'm gonna go ahead and say third down conversions. The Buffalo Bills last year was first in the NFL in third down conversions, and that's a trend that I would love to continue as well. When you're down in 3rd and 4s and 3rd and 6, and then down in those down and distance situations in those big games, you want to have the ability to come up and make those type of plays and keep the chains going, especially in my opinion in a Joe Brady offense, where he does like to start short and look deep, and he does like to stretch the field horizontally. So you want to be able to keep the plays going, extend these drives, and ultimately get in the end zone. So third down conversions, it was first last year. If we could continue that trend to be a top 5 team this year in third down conversions, I think that will bode well for the Buffalo Bills offense.
Yeah, definitely getting moving the sticks. Like, anytime you go with something like that, it all goes into, putting more points on the board, and it's going to be tough for them to score more than they did last year, maybe this year with the offense the way it is. But we're all hopeful that they can keep that going and not take a huge dip in the scoring department. We just don't know exactly who's going to get all the guys that Kincaid, who didn't get a lot of touchdowns, and Cook, who didn't get a lot of touchdowns at time, especially rushing. Some of those guys are now going to hopefully see an uptick, and we're still going to be able to put points on the board, because they definitely were able to score at a high clip last season. Let's see here. I just had it up, and I 6th in points per game and total points. So yeah, I mean, if you can still be a top 10 team in total points and points per game, you're going to be poised to have another playoff run and another run at the Super Bowl, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the totality of the Buffalo Bills offensive stats, they're pretty damn good up and down the offensive statistical categories for the Buffalo Bills, and there's not much you want to improve on. Possibly penalties is something that the Buffalo Bills want to work on and get better. I know we didn't get into that yet. We'll probably deep dive in that in a few, Lance. But overall, the Buffalo Bills were a good offense. The question is are we going to be able to mirror the success we had last year? Is the hope, or are we going to take that decline like most NFL evaluators and analysis think that we're going to take from the Buffalo Bills? And I think that is a question that is going to hinder over one Bills drive until we ultimately get those questions answered when the games are played. But I have full confidence in the Buffalo Bills offense and this team overall in the coaching staff to get us prepared to get the job done.
Yeah, one thing about the offense that made it seem a little weird last year. And obviously, the Bills scored a lot of points. Their points per game were very high. Obviously, they won double-digit games. But I think as a fan and as a guy that obviously watches every Bills game, I want to see more consistency from the offense. I think there was too many games or too many quarters where the Bills' offense was so just didn't show up. Like a couple of games, like the Giants game, they didn't show up. Denver game, they didn't show up, and it cost them a couple of times. Like they weren't able to put, I think, quarters consistently together. And I think, look, you don't have to score 14 points every quarter, right? Like that's not going to happen. It's the NFL. But I think the Bills became so kind of like relying on the end of the game, just on Josh Allen coming back. Patriots game was another one of them. Like the first half, the Bills offense was just non-existent. And then the second half, there's the offense. But the problem is it's a little too late. And it's just we're in such a hole, right? And I think this year I want to see, obviously the points per game can stay the same. It was a great number, but I just think if the Bills can become a more consistent offensive team from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, I think it's going to pave ways for how good this team can be.
Absolutely.
And when a team goes through something negative, a negative impact towards the team in terms of firing your offensive coordinator, you usually fire your offensive coordinator with worse statistics than we're reading right now. The Buffalo Bills are top 10 in just about every offensive statistical category. Only thing I see that the Buffalo Bills are not top 10 is passing attempts, and that looks like we're 16th in passing attempts, right? So is there a new standard set at one Bills drive is what I'm saying. Is there a new standard set that now the expectation has changed? And even though it's not championship caliber in terms of the results yet, but it's a championship caliber in terms of standards that the Buffalo Bills are setting in one Bills drive. I want to get y'all thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think they've continued to drive a standard being championship caliber at one Bills drive. I think they're, making a focal point to do the right things, trying to bond as much as they can off the field as well, and just do the things that they believe are going to be important to fostering that championship culture and continuing, to make the postseason and be in contention for the Super Bowl at the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree. I think the standards in Buffalo are crazy high, right? The Bills in the last 5 years in the regular season are second in the league in wins. They have 58 wins in the last 5 years. That's the second most in the National Football League. The only team ahead of them is the Kansas City Chiefs with 63. The Bills have more wins than the Ravens. Bills have more wins than the Packers, 49ers, Cowboys. The list goes on, right? Like they're second in the league in wins. Like you said, Rich, like they don't have that Super Bowl where like they don't have a Super Bowl standard, but they have a top 2, top 3, top 4 team standard. And I think when you saw that last year, and you mentioned the stats, right? The only stat they weren't top 10 was pass attempts, 16. I don't think that really matters that much at the end of the day. I think they saw an offense last year when going into firing Ken Dorsey that scored points, but it was just it looked so tough for them to score points. Like they grinded out those points. And obviously, look, you take the points no matter what, but with how talented that offense is and how good Josh Allen is and being the second best quarterback in the National Football League, I think that offense didn't look as good as it was supposed to be. It didn't look as smooth. There was clearly, I don't think Ken Dorsey was the best play caller. I don't think he was best at scheming guys open. And I think Now, when you shift towards Joe Brady, it fits a kind of Joe Brady fits the scheming guys open, doesn't need a legit number one, and kind of more of a system where Ken Dorsey was a lot more in Allen, a lot more in Diggs, less scheming guys open. And I just don't know if that really worked last year. But yeah, the standard in Buffalo has completely changed. Like I said, again, they're second in NFL in wins in the last 5 years. That's the only team they're behind is the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs have 3 Super Bowls. So like they're there in the regular season. They're just a couple scenarios away from probably having a Super Bowl, right? And that's how close they actually are. So the standard has completely changed.
Yeah, and just to get into the third metric for me is defensive yards per game. They were giving up 307.2 yards, which was ninth in the league, ninth best in the league. And some might say 300 yards a game is a lot, but if the Bills stay in the top 10 in defensive yards per game allowed, that's going to be a successful year for me. I think this defense went through some retooling, and you're going to maybe see some regression here in a little bit, but you really have to see this team being a top 10 defense in yards per game and in a lot of different stats, but we'll get to more of those stats where they need to improve from last year, maybe in getting into the top 10. But for staying the same or better from last season, this season, I think staying in the top 10 in yards per game on defense is going to be crucial, given the uncertainty of the offense and what it's going to be able to output this season.
Yeah, it's simple. It's similar to like the offensive yards per game, right? Like, yeah, obviously you don't want to give as many yards because you don't give up as many yards. You usually give up less points. That's kind of how it usually works. So it's simple. But for my last one, I did a player stat actually for a metric here.
Nice.
I did James Cook rushing yards to stay the same, total rushing yards. I would say maybe the one caveat to this, or one maybe rebuttal to this stat, is maybe more consistency throughout each game, how many yards he has, right? Like just not being in the offense some games, and that's maybe more of a coaching thing with Ken Dorsey. And then obviously when Joe Brady took over the running game, I think excelled a lot more. But I said James Cook total rushing yards, right? Cook finished 4th in the NFL last year in rushing yards with 1,122. He was only behind Kyron Williams, Derrick Henry, and Christian McCaffrey. So I think if Cook, I think I right now I would sign up for obviously another year of James Cook finishing top 5 in rushing yards, because I think obviously it helps the offense. The one thing I would add is maybe more consistency with James Cook, more carries. We saw in the Dallas game how efficient he was, and obviously Dallas was so bad stopping the run as well. And I think Green Bay found that out as well in the wild card round. We kind of gave the formula to beat Dallas really quickly to the National Football League, but I think James Cook had a great second year. Obviously, that touchdown number, probably we want to go up a little, being a little more careful with the football, but if he finishes top 5 in rushing yards again, I would be stoked, and I think this offense would be exactly where they want to be.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good one. James Cook's success. This offense is going to probably be even more reliant this year on that success than it was last year at times, and it's going to be crucial. I think you're right that he stays at least at his output if he doesn't increase it.
Yeah, I think that's excellent statistic and assessment with the James Cook analysis. I'm gonna go ahead and piggyback off that. Points per game. The Bills were top 5 in points per game. I believe they was 4th last year in points per game. It gave up a shade over 18 points per game. If the Buffalo Bills can mirror that this year, they're going to remain in a lot of ball games, even with the struggles of the offense. If that was to happen, they're going to still find their way in ball games and hopefully be able to pull it out at the end if the Buffalo Bills run into some struggles early on in camaraderie with the offense and getting guys fully invested in what Joe Brady is trying to implement. So I believe points per game, if the Buffalo Bills can do that, I know we have a lot of different faces back there, right? Who's going to play safety? The defensive line depth is different. We got a plethora of linebackers we signed this season. We got Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas are now the leaders on the back end right now, right? So we have a lot of moving parts and changing parts within that defense. But if they can keep us in the game, I think we'll remain in a lot of ball games, and that'll give opportunities to Josh Allen to win it late.
And
Yeah, 26.5 points a game. I think that's going to be plenty enough if they can mimic that.
Are you talking? Hey, Rich, you're talking about defense?
I'm talking about defense points. Defense giving up. Yep, we're fourth in points allowed in 18. Yes.
Yeah. So if they keep
and
they were in a lot of games last year because of the defense, and a lot of games they just their offense just never got going. The Patriots game, I know the last possession the Bills did not get a stop, but throughout the game they were in that game because of that defense. The Buccaneers game, obviously they ended up winning. The Giants game, they're in because of the defense. The offense did nothing. The Denver Broncos game, they were in it because of the defense. And I think if they're there again, I don't think the offense will. I know it's a lot of new faces on the offense, and I get it, but I don't think the offense will go through that same kind of struggle again. They obviously have their games that they're just not there, but we saw week in and week out how stale that offense was, and obviously it created a change, and reason Ken Dorsey ended up losing his job. But if the defense gives up 18 points a game or in the top 5 again, like you said, fourth, they're going to be in every single game. And I don't think the offense will have that struggle again, which I think they can go from 11 wins, which look, 11 to 13 wins is a lot of wins in the National Football League. So I'm not saying that, but it might look a little better, even if they only win, not only, but even if they end up winning 11, maybe 12 games and you're like, oh, shouldn't that result being 13, 14 games? Maybe not, but I think it might look a little prettier, and we might be a little bit more confident in where the Bills are next season.
Yeah, I agree. I think, obviously there's uncertainty around the offense. And so saying that the defense needs to continue to carry this team in the sort of way by continuing to be top 5 in points given up per game is legit. And I think it's going to be a lot of people's sentiment to see, to think that. But I think the defense is going to be a little bit different, and there may be room there for. I'm not sure if that stat is actually going to be sustainable this year. Maybe it will, but I just feel like the opponents we play this year, the schedule we have, it'll be interesting to see if they can maintain that through this season. I'll be impressed. I'll be thoroughly impressed. And there's ways for them to do that, but there's just an uncertainty with their defensive line. Obviously, Milano coming back. Obviously, the change over in the secondary to how they're going to go about that. And I'll be interested to see. I'm going to bookmark that one, Akeem, and see exactly where they continue to be in that points per game given up on the defensive end. Anything else you guys want to say? I'm going to turn it over to top 3 that we got to improve, because we talked about now these things have to be on the same level as last year, but now it's like, all right, what do we got to kick up a notch? For me, first thing I thought about was turnover differential. We did have a positive turnover differential, but I think that's probably going to go into maybe something that you guys might already have anyway. But we were 3rd in takeaways, but we were 12th in turnover differential. So that's not very good. I want to be top 10 in turnover differential every, and yes, it's good that you were +2. It's good that you did have a positive differential, but at the same time, I want that to improve. And what's going to improve that? Josh Allen throwing less interceptions, right? And that's where that all comes from. And maybe that's something that you had to improve in this year.
I'll piggyback on that just to keep with the turnover, because I think Rich might have something with the turnover as well, because I think that's obviously something we got to talk about. But I found a cool stat, not a cool because it doesn't look good for the Bills, but a cool, interesting kind of stat. Percent of games with interceptions thrown. So this is kind of piggybacking off what Lance said with the turnovers, but this obviously focuses on the interceptions, which Josh Allen obviously has a main part of that. Obviously, there's a couple. Remember the Denver game when Gabe Davis' ball went through his hands, still a Josh Allen interception, but that's a different conversation for a different day. So the Bills last year threw an interception in 73.7% of their games. Only teams that threw more were the Patriots, the Commanders, and the Browns. And obviously, I know the Browns found a little lightning in the bottle of Joe Flacco, but none of those three teams really had any answers at quarterbacks, right? Patriots drafted a quarterback this year because they didn't have a quarterback. Commanders drafted a quarterback because they didn't have a quarterback. And the Browns, obviously, Deshaun Watson's coming back. So those are not the teams you want to be kind of grouped in based off last year with their quarterback play. So the Bills threw an interception in 73% of their games last year. One more bad stat for the interceptions percentage. The Bills also threw an interception in 100% of their away games. So obviously going on the road is tough enough in the NFL, but when you're giving the other team extra opportunities, you're just biting yourself in the foot. And I think it's a situation, and I think the Bills kind of have to work on that. And obviously that's a Josh Allen thing, that's a Joe Brady thing, that's a receiver thing, that's a scheme thing. It's a lot of things. And I think when I saw that 73% of the games interceptions, that's a lot. The three teams they were around, not great teams last year based on quarterback play. And then when I stumbled upon, I was like, man, I got to include this. 100% of their away games, they threw an interception.
Yeah, so our minds went pretty much the same place.
Yeah, that is definitely have to improve on that. That has to change, especially this year with this team in a transition in a rebuild, a mini rebuild mode with the amount of new players that we're having. That definitely cannot happen. So excellent statistics from both you fellas. I'm gonna go ahead. Let me go ahead and give more simpler statistic here, right? What about the run defense? 28th in the NFL last year in run defense, giving up 4.6 yards per carry. It seems as if it's every year the Buffalo have, even though we put out an overall good defense, but every year the Buffalo Bills have some type of struggles in the run game and defending the run, and that's something that I want to see improve. That to me screams physicality. That's a battle within the trenches, and if a team can run the ball on you, that tells me that they're the more physical team. That tells me that they're playing more bully ball than you. So I would love to see the Buffalo Bills tighten up within the trenches and be consistent throughout the run defense for the entire season. Again, the league average is 4.2 yards per carry. The Buffalo Bills is giving up 4.6 yards per carry, 28th in the NFL, and I think that is unacceptable, and that has to be improved upon.
Yeah, that's going to obviously be a game plan thing for opposing teams coming into Buffalo or playing the Bills, is to, assert their dominance on the ground and continue to carry that metric throughout next season. And the defense that we play with the lighter, faster linebackers, the nickel base, so you have that slot corner, nickel corner, and Teron Johnson on the field most often. You don't find the Bills in a traditional 4-3 all that often. When they need to stack the box, they obviously can, but I think they also will need to just continue to add. They continued this offseason to add more size on the defensive line. And Daquan Jones also being out last year affected that as well. So I don't think that you can really say like no team's going to have 100% of their guys all year. So you do have to take that. But Daquan Jones is a big part of eating up those blocks. And now they've got guys really that can go ahead and then back up Daquan Jones this year. So their defensive line depth is better, but we'll see. The linebacker depth also was added to, and we'll see how that helps them, with the run defense as well.
And I think that's going to be the interesting proponent right there. The linebackers, and what role do the linebackers play in this defense? Because we have a lot of depth at that linebacker position this year, and I know that could be because AJ Klein was asked to do things that we shouldn't have been in the position for him to do at that moment, at that time in the playoffs. And maybe because of that, we want to add depth that way. Or is it because there's going to be times where we're going to rotate a little bit more? Teron Johnson has been suffering from some concussions, even though he signed a contract, the most lucrative contract in NFL history for a slot cornerback. We want to be able to protect him as well. He never comes off the field, and he's not the biggest of guys either. And he has to play the cornerback position and that third linebacker position as well. So could this be a small transition within the Buffalo Bills defense, having a new defensive coordinator and having this influx in linebackers, just to say, you know what, we're going to give Teron Johnson a spell, and giving Teron Johnson a spell is going to get bigger guys on the football field and have us perform better against the run. And then when we're in obvious passing situations, we're going to put Teron Johnson back in there, and he could be equally as effective. So I'm definitely interested to see how the linebackers come to play and the depth at the linebacker position come to play for the Buffalo Bills defense this season.
Sorry about that. When my AirPods die, it kicks me out and doesn't let me hear you guys. So I have to restart it. So
I figured.
No idea why that happens. But yeah, sorry about that. I'm
We were
back.
just talking about run defense. I brought up that,
Mhm.
additions like Austin Johnson, Deshaun Williams to that interior defense line, Dwayne Smoot might make a big
Yeah.
impact in that, where we know Rousseau is a good run defender as well. And then also, just having more, lighter, faster linebackers kind of. And so the injury to Daquan Jones affects
Yeah.
the run defense. But now this year with a deeper interior, I think we're more poised to be able to have a more consistent run defense.
I was gonna bring up Daquan Jones, just obviously missing majority of the year is a huge issue with the run defense, and obviously he's known for clogging the lanes, obviously opening it up for Ed Oliver, but just being such a good run stopper. And the one weird thing about the Bills' rush defense, like Rich, you said they finished top 5 worst in obviously yards per carry per game or throughout the season. They were in total rushing yards allowed. They were very middle of the pack when it came to total rushing yards allowed. I don't know what kind of like how that works more or less, because I don't know the deep dive into that. It's just interesting because they're very bad in yards per carry, but they're very average, like 15th or 16th when it comes to total yards and rushing yards. So I don't know where that kind of works. So I think maybe that shows that there's room for growth with the Bills rush defense, and that it's there. The quality is there. It's just not consistently there. And I think some of the additions, like you said, faster linebackers, and then obviously having Daquan Jones back, and hopefully he's fully healthy, should help the run defense just a bit.
Yeah, and so
I agree.
My second to improve is also an individual like you had previously. Rousseau sacks had 6 last year. I think he's got to get double-digit sacks this year. He's got to take that leap, that step. His pressure rate's good. I mean, his win percentage is 15.5%, and that's best. He had 370 pass rush attempts, and win percentage of 15.5% is best on the team for having that many snaps. There were guys better with a lot less snaps at pass rush, but I just think you do have to get home, or you have to finish. So we were looking to Greg Rousseau because he is that first round pick, that guy we kind of hope is going to turn into a game wrecker, a game breaker. You got to plan your offense around making sure he doesn't disrupt what you're doing, and I'm not sure that he's that guy, but this year is kind of going to be a big step towards proving whether or not he can be.
Lance, the last time I was on your show about a month and a half ago, we were talking about Greg Rousseau and talking about his pressures, right? And they're right up there as a top 12, top 13 edge rusher in the league when it comes to pressures, right? And his numbers keep going up. I think, and I predicted, and we talked about, I think this is an Ed Oliver year for Greg Rousseau. Like that huge jump that takes him to a completely different level of player and then a completely different difference maker because the underlying metrics are there, right? Like everything tells you this guy should be a double-digit sack guy every single year. It's just he hasn't produced that. His pressure numbers are right up there with guys that have double-digit sacks. I don't have the number of the players on the top of my head, but Lance, I named some legit players last time that are legit edge rushers in the National Football League, and it put him as like a top 10 pressure guy in the NFL. He just hasn't got that sack number. Pressures are great. Sacks are even better, and I think maybe the underlying metrics are telling us that this year is the year for Gregory Rousseau.
Yeah, if you look, he's 17th in win percentage in the NFL last year.
Really
Danielle
good.
Hunter, Will Anderson, Bradley Chubb, T.J. Watt, Rashawn Gary, Jadeveon Clowney, Alex Highsmith, Khalil Mack, Zadarius Smith, Joshua Hines Allen, Trey Hendrickson, Aiden Hutchinson, Nick Bosa, Bryce Huff, Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett. Those are the guys who had better win percentages than him. So he's winning. He's getting there. He's getting, he's affecting the offense, but he's not finishing at a high enough clip. So it just, all those guys I mentioned, I believe that's not true. Okay, I'm not going to say that. I thought most of them had double digit. So this was, minimum of 325 to 328 pass rush snaps, and which Greg Rousseau had 370. So getting a good win percentage. Now he had 200 less than some of the premier pass rushers, and so as he gets on the field for more and more, I think that his sack, if he continues that 15.5 win percentage and gets increased pass rush snaps, that's going to lead to the more sacks that he needs. So I don't doubt that he can do it. I just think that we need to then get him more pass rushing opportunities.
Agreed.
Yeah. Gregory Rousseau is a tough eval for me. I know what he is now. What he is now is he's a excellent run defender, excellent at setting the edge, and I know the expectations from that aspect. Does he have more of a ceiling to his game? And like you guys alluded to, and that's the pass rush. We need him to have double digits sacks this year. Who's going to get it? There's no Leonard Floyd's here. So if him, then who? We are hoping that Von Miller can reclaim some of the juice he had prior to his injury. I know he said in an interview somewhere that he wished he hadn't played last season. Because of the injury. I guess he wanted to get back and get back with his teammates. So we hope this year we can get a much improved Von Miller for our sake and for the defensive line's sake. So we'll see what happens there. But Gregory Rousseau is one of my favorite players on the defense, and I would love and hope he does step up this season and equate to having sacks and being that guy.
Agree. I'll give my second metric that needs improving. Right, we're on the second one at the moment. I'm going another one with the percentages, and this percentage does not bode well for the Bills once again. Field goal conversion percentage. The Bills finished the season with a 76.47% conversion rate on field goals, which was fourth worst in the NFL last year. The Bills were also at home, finished with a 72.22% on percentage on field goals, which was second worst in the NFL at home. Only team was worse was the Giants, and the Giants only made 50% of their field goals at home. So I have no idea what the Giants were doing kicking wise at home. 50% is wild to me. But so the Bills, look, the home number, can you chalk it up to the environment and where you play and the wind? Yeah, obviously that's a major element, but you can't be the second worst home kicking team when it comes to making field goals in the NFL and expect to win a Super Bowl. That just cannot happen. And you also can't be a bottom 5 team in making field goals. So basically saying Tyler Bass, this is a big year for Tyler Bass and where he is kicking wise for the Bills, because heading into last year, I thought he was pretty much of a sure thing. Heading into this year, I don't know. So a metric that needs to get better for the Bills, they got to make field goals. That percentage number cannot be bottom 5 in the NFL again, and they can't be the second worst home kicking team. Well, I think if we probably went back to the last 20 years, the Bills probably home kicking probably is not great just because of where they play, but because you hosted a divisional round game, because you expect to win the division, you're going to play playoff games at home, and you want to be the 1 seed, and you want to play at home, you have to be able to kick field goals at home. It doesn't have to be the best in the league. You just can't be the second worst field goal kicking team at home in the league.
Yeah, and if you say that there's an issue getting the hold down and that's affecting Tyler Bass, then give me
Fix it.
Zach Browning over
Fix it.
Sam Martin. Give
Yeah,
me whoever.
100%.
Then get Sam Martin out of here. If that's the issue you believe is causing problems, and you believe that Tyler Bass can reclaim how great he was a few seasons ago, then give me someone else. And don't just roll Sam Martin out there. And I'll give another reason for that for in a minute here when I go for my next step. Akeem, what do you have, brother? And what do you think? I mean, I guess you want to talk a little bit about what Peter's saying here in his stat with the field goal percentage.
Yeah, and I'm glad Peter brought it up, because that definitely has to be improved upon if you want to hoist that Lombardi Trophy. 82.8% was his conversion rate, Tyler Bass, last season. Compare that to Harrison Buckner. He was 94.3% conversion rate. His worst rate of his career was 88.9%. Is his worst, Harrison Buckner, for his entire career. So that just gives you an idea of the levels that these kickers are on. So I definitely agree with that Tyler Bass statistic there. And what is Tyler Bass a part of? Tyler Bass is a part of the special teams unit, and the entire special teams unit for the Buffalo Bills hasn't been great. They're ranked 28th overall in special teams. Their punt return average is 25th overall. Their kick return coverage is 27th overall for the Buffalo Bills. So if we're talking about Sean McDermott talking about 3 units of football: offense, defense, and special teams, we're talking about Sean McDermott giving guys roster spots specifically because they can play special teams. Well, if you're going to do that, our special teams has to be above average. Our special teams is going to have to play a lot better brand of football. Now, I know the kickoff coverages and things have changed a little bit. We'll see what happens this year, but I think the special teams unit, with Brandon Bass being a pivotal and holding a crucial role in that, has to improve overall.
Yeah. And so do you have another, you have your second metric to improve on this year?
Well, I for my second metric, I wanted to give a little twist, right? Because we are talking about metrics, and it seems as if the Buffalo Bills, when we look at this overall stats and metrics that they have, it's pretty good overall, right? They're top 10 in a lot of categories, offensively and defensively. And if you look at historically for the Buffalo Bills, where 4 AFC championships, amongst the top teams in wins across the last 5 years, right, Lance? Behind Peter, behind, I believe, the Kansas City Chiefs. You alluded to earlier today.
Yeah, second in wins behind the Chiefs.
So now, for me, when I see all these metrics and I don't see a Lombardi Trophy, it's what can the Bills improve on that? Situational football. The Bills have not won the Super Bowl because they don't play good in situational football. In crucial moments when they need high-level play, high-caliber play, the pressure or whatever it is, the situation is, the Buffalo Bills seem to fold under. Field goal miss by the Denver Broncos before they ultimately won the game. Why was that a penalty? Situational football, right? If you was prepared in that situation, ultimately the Buffalo Bills would have won that game against the Denver Broncos. The Buffalo Bills came back. They gave a heroic effort against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles, in their situational football, in the rain, in the wind, they kicked the 59-yard field goal and made it. Our kicker, Tyler Bass, missed the field goal that game. Situational football, when you get the ball first, you want to be able to score and you want to be able to win. That's a big, crucial moment. Situational football. The Buffalo Bills got the ball first against the Philadelphia Eagles, and they ended up punching the ball away. Ultimately, Jalen Hurts, what they did, they end up scoring a touchdown. So ultimately, in my opinion, I would love for the Buffalo Bills in the crucial moments, in the clutch moments, to play better situational football. So that's the little twist I have in terms of what I would love the Buffalo Bills to improve on this season. When it counts the most, when it matters the most, against the Kansas City Chiefs, against the San Francisco 49ers, when them good coordinators is calling their games. I need Joe Brady to call the play. I need Sean McDermott to call the play. I need the players to execute the play. So situational football is something I want the Buffalo Bills to improve on this season.
How about in overtime when they had the ball first and the miscommunication with Gabe Davis
Yes.
and Josh Allen, right? Gabe ran the wrong route. Josh Allen ran the whatever it was,
It's
right?
It's situational football.
That's a situational play. And even I totally forgot that 59-yard field goal happened from the Eagles. Now I'm a little sadder just because I just remembered that. But no, yeah, the Gabe Davis one, too many men on the field. Not even just like boneheaded penalties, but Deion Dawkins against Chris Jones, right? In the divisional game. And I get it. Chris Jones is probably the best defensive tackle in football, but that's a situational play, right? Like it's not even just guys making plays after, like just continuing making plays. It's you got to make one play. That's a lot of games in the playoffs, especially come down to one guy making a play, right?
Making a play. That's what it is.
13 seconds.
13 seconds.
That's a huge situational.
Situational football. Fourth and 18 against the Vikings. That's situational football.
Guy not making a play, another guy makes a play on another team. Even the 13 seconds where the special teams was a botch. When they went on defense, no one made a play either, right? Like you had a chance to go make a play, and then you caveat to 2 years ago when they beat the Chiefs in the division in the regular season, right? Von Miller gets a pressure, and Taron Johnson has a game-sealing interception against the Chiefs in the regular season, right? That's when you make Von Miller gets the pressure, Taron Johnson makes an interception, situational play wins you the football game, right? Like it's the little things in the National Football League. One play goes the right way. Deion Dawkins blocks Chris Jones and doesn't allow pressure on Josh Allen. We might win that game. That's just how small margins are in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like 13 seconds for me is like, okay. And I think that people hate this take probably, but it's like McDermott is and was a young coach. And so 13 seconds was an experience. And now it's like you've gone through some of these experiences that have really, ultimately in our minds cost this team a Super Bowl or two because of these situations that you haven't necessarily been able to execute or get people on your team to be able to execute in the, put them in the positions to execute in these high leverage situations. And that's got to end now. You're no longer a young coach. You've been a head coach now for 7 years. And now it's time to show us that you've learned from these situations and that you're now able to get your team on the same page and to be able to execute as a whole, as a team in those situations. So I wholeheartedly agree with that. But I think he does show some semblance of improving that throughout his tenure now. And there's still times when you see mismanagement, and for me, I just think like I've given him a pass in some of these past because it's like in some of the past mistakes he's made, because it's like, all right, you haven't been in this situation necessarily before, but it's like he's probably seen most situations at this point, and that can't happen anymore. There's no more excuse. Like if you can't get yourself and your team prepared to execute in these high leverage situations, like that's on you. And then, that's what's going to increase the noise. People are already clamoring for you to be fired here in some semblance. And it's like, I think that starting this year for me, I'm really going to be looking at that, Akeem. I think I'm going to be looking for like no more excuses. You've had your time now to learn as a head coach. and it's got to be buttoned up.
And that's and you know and that's going to be the key right there, right? What is this? Is this growth, like you said? Was he a young coach before, or is this a trend?
Yeah.
Right?
Is this
Because
your MO? Yeah.
is this your MO when things get tight and when you're playing against the elite coaches, the Shanahans, the McVays, the Stefanskis, and you're in those crucial moments? Are you going to tense up? Are you going to get tight? Because excelling in situational football, in my opinion, it's a coach's thing, and the players is a representation of the coaches. So if you're confident, it's going to show. If you're tense, it's going to show. And I think your coaches is ultimately the representation of that. Now, I want to take it a step further, and then we want to continue because I think this is an interesting discussion. What about Joe Brady and his concerns? Because I have concerns with him as well in terms of using a basketball analogy a little bit, right? Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics. What was his MO in terms of a negative talk? He had no left. Jaylen Brown can't go left. Jaylen Brown can't go left. What about Joe Brady in terms of his offense and how he implements it? He does a great job calling short to intermediate plays. But does he have the game? Does he have the intermediate and long game to erase the predictability from his offense? Because that's the ultimate concern I have with Joe Brady, is that he can be a tad predictable. So how do you feel about that?
I would say a couple of things, right? Like the predictability is obviously he has to it's kind of learn on the fly almost, right? Like it's kind of similar to Ken Dorsey. What works, what doesn't work when it comes to being predictable. And I think obviously having a veteran leading quarterback, and Josh Allen's getting to that status at this point, which is kind of crazy to think about, but like you kind of can lean on Josh Allen because he's been in these moments and he's been in these situations, right? And I think Joe Brady being in Carolina, right, learning from the mistakes there in Carolina, wasn't fully his fault, wasn't a great situation. Obviously, Matt Rule completely failed in Carolina, belongs in college because he's a great college coach. And then Joe Brady last year, right, he had experience with the Bills, quarterback coach, OC, playoff experience with the Bills last year, right? I think all that will help him succeed in 2024, but the predictability is something there's not a great answer for me to give you because I don't fully know and there's nothing we can really do about it, obviously. But it's something, like I said, he's good at scheming guys open. He's good with the short yardage. He's good with intermediate. And I think this roster is kind of built around that. It really is, right? With the personnel on this team. Obviously, Keon Coleman can stretch the field. Valdez Scantling has been known for being able to stretch the field, but Samuel, obviously, intermediate short guy. Shakir, intermediate short guy. Kincaid, Cook, right? All those guys are intermediate short guys. Obviously, they can take one to the house any time of the week, but I think it's not being super predictable, but I think the personnel helps because I think you have a couple other guys that can do different things. And if Keon Coleman bursts on the scene and becomes a legit deep threat, and MVS maybe is a legit deep threat, then you're not predictable because you have other ways to target defenses. And if you have other options in guys that can go deep, then you won't become predictable. If you will become predictable if you have no other outlet besides short passes and intermediate.
Good answer. What you thinking, Lance?
He muted himself.
Amateur hour.
My bad. I don't think that I'm going to give Joe Brady the same pass because of that past experience that Peter spoke about. So it's not like he's coming in, his first time in this situation anymore. So he's been in this situation, not for years by any means, but now he's seen it at least. And now there should be more, he should have those lessons. And this team as a whole, I think I will hold to that same thing. The time for mismanagement, excuses, miscommunication, and not executing in crunch time in key moments has to end because it's costing the Bills Josh Allen's prime of his career, and it can't happen anymore. This team could potentially have 2 Super Bowls at this point if it weren't for some unfortunate things that, whether they're players or coaches, I'm not in the building. I don't know exactly whose fault they are for 13 seconds and some other things there. But like, for all intents and purposes, we could be talking right now with the Bills having a couple of Super Bowls if things go a couple of different ways in key moments. And that's where I am fed up with any narrative that there's just no more room for that in my mind. Like it's got to be executed. The communication has to be there, and you have to be prepared to be able to perform in those situations from the top down. Like you mentioned, comes from the top, trickles down from the top head coach through the offensive coordinator and then to the offensive players as well. So I expect Joe Brady to take this opportunity, take this team, and make it such that they are less predictable. That's something you and I have talked about on the Founders Pod and things like that before, his predictability. But I would like to think that Josh Allen and those guys can really have a voice and say, look, this is, we're getting our heads bashed in here because the people are keen on this. So
Mhm.
let's not do, so hopefully Brady's uh, rep, rep, I guess, rapport with his players and his reputation for having this open communication with his players is going to help avoid that, and that concern will be eliminated. But it's definitely right now something I'm waiting to see on, and I don't think that I'm gonna have a lot of patience because it's like at this point, this team should be able to do these things with the players we have, with the coaches we have, and the lessons they should have already learned. I believe that, the excuses of, oh, this is a growing moment, this is a growth moment, he's learning. Um, I'm just, I don't have a lot of patience for that going forward. And I have had a lot of empathy and a lot of patience in that because I saw the bigger picture. But I just think you know, that bigger picture now is getting smaller as, Josh Allen ages and as, this team gets closer and closer to having to, um, go through more turnover.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
My next one, I couldn't find the stat I wanted, unfortunately, around some pass rushing effectiveness in the playoffs. I think they do need to get there. That's kind of honorable mention, and then explosive plays. I think I don't have the exact stat, but I know that they lack in explosive plays. So those two are things that are going to be worth talking about. But uh, for me, I'm going to go to the special teams part like Peter did, and I'm going to talk about the punting because
Mm.
in net punt yards, Bills were sixth worst, 41.1 net punt yards. So the hang time's not there or the coverage is not there and the overall execution of the punting. Now, if you look at the sheer number of punts that the Bills had, 51, that's a pretty good number. It's a low number, but um, at the same time, you've got, that's the second fewest punts, but you've got the sixth highest and the fourth highest average yards per return in 12.5 yards per return. So uh, I think they got to figure something out on special teams as a whole, and especially with punting, getting too many kicks uh, in the middle of the field, not enough directional towards where the coverage has an
Mhm.
easier time, and they just have that's got to be better.
And you mentioned Sam Martin, not the best holder, right? Like, I don't
Hmm.
love the fixation that the Bills front office has with Sam Martin because he's not a great punter either, right?
Right.
Like, if he was a great punter and you was like an iffy holder, I guess you could understand where the Bills are coming from because you play in Buffalo, and I already mentioned the weather when it comes to kicking and all that kind of stuff. He's not a great punter. He has not been a great punter for the Bills, and I know people love it's Jack Browning. I always think it's Jake. It's Jack Browning or Jake Browning.
Jack Browning.
Jack Browning. Jake Browning, I think, was the quarterback from Washington. But
Yeah, he
Jack,
was. Yeah.
yeah, Jack Browning. Look, I think if he comes in and he's able to be a consistent punter and he can hold, Sam Martin shouldn't be on this team, right? Like I don't think there's anything that should be holding back anybody for winning this punting job. And I just think the fixation with Sam Martin is a little weird in my opinion, just because like I said, he hasn't been that good of a punter. Like it's not, he hasn't been special. I wish he's been really good because then you can kind of justify it, but he hasn't. So, I'll go with my stat. I went to penalties per game, and it's a frustrating looking thing here. So the Bills last year averaged 5.9 penalties per game, which ranked 8th worst in the NFL. And then for some reason, the Bills on the road do not go well, right? When I talked with interceptions, they threw an interception in every single away game, and now they're not good. They commit a lot of penalties on the road. They commit 7.1 penalties on the road, which ranked 2nd worst in the NFL. We have to fix that. 8th worst in the NFL total is bad. 2nd worst on the road is horrible. Like the interceptions with the road. It's already hard enough to go on the road and win in the National Football League. Don't hurt yourself. This team was last year too veteran. Now this year they're a little younger. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's not good when it comes to the penalties. The Bills have to be able to clean up the penalties. And for some reason, under the Sean McDermott regime, penalties have always been a thing. And you feel like how he runs his system, you feel like that would be the complete opposite of how Sean McDermott does things. But for some reason, the Bills and penalties do not go well together. They have to be able to clean that up. And look, the Bills are already an elite team with committing the 2nd most penalties on the road and 8th most overall in the NFL. If they just were average, if they just were 50, if we went back and did this next year after the Bills win a Super Bowl, I always like to throw that in. And we were like, okay, the Bills finished 15th in the NFL in penalties per game, and they're 11th on the road, right? You'd be like, that's a great improvement. They don't have to be the best at this because they clearly aren't, and they're still a really good team. If they just become average, I'm just asking for average when it comes to penalties per game.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that even when we talked about our turnover differential and those kind of things, it's even Akeem's situational football thing, it all ties in to execution and being able. And look, I mean, they're all human. Mistakes are going to happen. That's fine. But at the end of the day, it's you're a professional NFL football team here, and with the aspirations you have, the talent you have on this roster, it's just inexcusable. And I think that you probably saw those things get better in the last 6 weeks, and it helped them improve to the divisional winning record of was 11-6, I guess. So they were able to do that by kind of eliminating that late, but especially in the postseason, and you have to just be cleaner as a football team for sure.
Hey, Rich, you muted?
Especially like so
Who's the
Mark
amateur
B.
now?
Yeah, I know. I tried to play it off. You caught it.
Yeah.
That's one thing about going live, baby. But yeah, you're absolutely right, man. In my opinion, we just got to improve overall, right? We just got to improve. We just got to improve in all aspects. In terms of what I was going to get into, I was going to get into an individual player, and that's Von Miller. He doesn't get a pass in this anymore. This is no longer okay. This is a combative sport. You got hurt. Me personally, I understand the magnitude of the injury. So I didn't have high expectations for Von Miller last year, but this year it's back to normal. We need Von Miller to be that Von Miller of old, in terms of that guy, or close to that guy he was before he signed the contracts for the Buffalo Bills, and when he had 8 sacks in those first 8-9 games for the Buffalo Bills. We need him to be closer to that guy than the guy that was put on display last season that was basically non-existent. At the end of the day, Von Miller signed a contract. He is fully 100% healthy this year, and this is a production-based business, and he is looked at as the household name. He is looked at as the leader in the locker room now, when you don't have guys like Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde and guys that's been core players for a number of years under the Sean McDermott era. He is now the guy that is looked to in the locker room as the leader in the locker room, and now he has to be looked to as a leader on the football field, and he got to put that on display this year for, in my opinion, for that Buffalo Bills defense to have success. When we talk about getting sacks, we had 54 last year. Right? When we talk about pressure rate, we want our pressure rate to improve. In my opinion, I think we was about 24% last season. I would love for the pressure rate to improve, and if Von Miller can be a proponent to that improvement, we would love to take that. So overall, I would love for Von Miller to get back to the player he once was.
Yeah, it's crucial because this defensive line now is at a crossroads, I believe, to where we were going to see what Rousseau and Epinesa are, but we don't have, and we don't expect necessarily them to be that closer that we signed Von Miller to be. And so, that's an element of this defense that this team needs. And if we don't get it from Von Miller, that makes it, unless someone else steps into that role, which we're hoping kind of that Greg Rousseau can maybe, develop into. But if without that closer, that, kind of that Chris Jones for the Chiefs, I think he was the guy that actually pushed Dawkins into Allen last year when he tried to make that play to Shakir in the end zone. So it's like, you got to have that guy that when the moment is there, they make sure the opposing team isn't able to execute their play successfully. And I think that is exactly what Von Miller was signed for, and he's got to be that this year.
We need our guys to live up to the expectations that they was brought into. Elaborate a little bit. Von Miller signed that $100 million contract. So now we need him to perform as that guy that is going to make that play when we need that play made in those crucial moments. Gregory Rousseau, he was signed late in the first round. He was drafted late in the first round, but nevertheless, he was a first round pick. So the expectation now is we want him to grow in terms of rounding out his game and have pass rush ability to go along with setting the edge and being a great run defender. That's the expectation, at least I have, of him being a first round pick and being 6'7" and being that type of defender with that type of wingspan. I think he has more to the ceiling than he displayed. And AJS Epinesa, I want him to continue to produce like he's been produced in the last couple of years and add more consistency on top of that. That's my expectation for Epinesa. Why? He's a second round pick. If I get more than that, then hey, fool's gold, right? But at least he is setting the expectation for that second round pick, and he makes plays and he had, I believe, 6.5 sacks back-to-back years. Now that he signed his new contract, can he follow that up with consistency throughout the season? So these are certain expectations I have based on how they're viewed and where they fit.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I mean, that's what they're brought here for, and this team's going to only be better when those folks step up and realize their potential. Now, Peter came up with a pretty cool idea, and we're going to let the guest host kind of take back the reins a little bit like he's used to, and kind of take us through a little segment that he had in mind. And we're going to wrap up and say goodbye. But if you haven't done so yet, please go out, hit that like button and the share button. If you're on your mobile on Facebook, go to the actual Built in Buffalo Facebook page and like the live rather than hitting the like button while you're in the view portion of the video, because that doesn't generate the likes quite the same. If you could do that, it'd be appreciated. On YouTube, like and share, please. And if you're on X, please repost and give it a like. If you're listening back on the audio platform, give it a follow and a like as well. So we appreciate everyone for tuning in to Triple Coverage here on the Built in Buffalo Network. Just a reminder, the official energy partner of Built in Buffalo is Monster Energy Drink. So we appreciate the folks from Monster coming on board and being a partner, the official energy partner of Built in Buffalo. Peter, take us through a couple of these what ifs here,
Yeah.
and let's get into that.
Yeah, I won't give my opinion on them. I want to know you guys. When I was writing them up, I was kind of thinking what I would say if someone asked me. And of course, you guys get Monster as soon as I leave, which was that's always fun, right? I saw that and I was like, you got to be kidding me. No, but that's awesome. So I'll give you a couple. There's some good ones I wrote, and then there's some negative ones. So, hey, Rich, I'll start with you, and then Lance can go. So, what if James Cook hits double-digit rushing touchdowns? He had 2 total rushing touchdowns last year. What if he hits double-digit rushing touchdowns? What does that mean for this offense?
If James Cook can hit double-digit rushing touchdowns, I think it would be a overall success for the Buffalo Bills offense. The reason being is if he has those rushing touchdowns, I believe the Buffalo Bills are running an efficient offense because they can depend on James Cook to now not only get in between the tackles and pick up those yards, but now he's getting in the end zone, making the Buffalo Bills offense more efficient. And because he's getting in the end zone and because Joe Brady likes to run the ball and he has an identity of running the football, the hope is that keeps turnovers down from Josh Allen, right? The interceptions down, that keeps turnovers down as well. So if the Buffalo Bills or if James Cook can score more rushing touchdowns, it can be a trickle effect in a lot of positive results for the Buffalo Bills offense.
Yeah, I think it's going to mean that this offense is starting to hit on those explosive plays. And James Cook is not a goal line runner by any means. We know that. So that means if he's scoring touchdowns, that's now 15, 20, 25, 30-yard touchdown runs that we get. The more scores we can have from further away from the end zone just puts less wear and tear on this offense. So I think when you talk about James Cook scoring, you're going to look at what does that mean? That means that, he's probably breaking loose and he's breaking these 40, 50-yard runs maybe. But I would say, at least from the 15 back, once you start getting inside that 15, 10-yard line, you're probably looking at Josh Allen or Ray Davis or even maybe a Ty Johnson if Frank Gore Jr. happens to make the team. Those carries are probably going to go to those folks. But I think that James Cook scoring that many rushing touchdowns means that they're starting to open some holes and he's starting to break some big ones from about 15 or 20 yards out and beyond.
Like it.
Saw a pretty good comment here. I just wanted to get thoughts on it, if you don't mind right now. Ismail Valentine, the hype about Miami and the Jets beating us outright is tough. Your thoughts? And I'll start here. I was, listening to a lot of folks give their opinions on the Jets in Miami, and they've had formidable rosters. And if my mind serves me correct, we beat Miami twice last year, right? So
Yes.
we split with the Jets because of a punt return touchdown, right? And then we swept the Patriots, didn't we?
No,
Or
we
did
split
split
with the
the
Patriots.
Okay. So now you're looking at Miami again, and where does anyone believe that even with their roster on paper that they had last year, they weren't overly banged up any more than the Bills were when they played us last year, and they couldn't beat us in their own house for the division. So for me, I'm not worried about the Miami thing. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, but he's 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers now coming off an Achilles. I don't think the effectiveness with his arm will be there, but having that brain operating the offense is going to be a benefit that Jets may have. So I just think that, it's tough for me to hear the Miami side of it because they've already had their team on paper and couldn't beat us when it mattered. So, you know, I don't know. I just think it's
Yeah.
4-2 in the division for the Bills as a floor, and I'm taking, those odds.
Yeah, the 4-2 is a little weird, right? Obviously, the first game of the year, the Bills had no business losing that game. Obviously, the
Mm,
Bills did that to themselves, and then obviously in New England, the Bills didn't show up for most of the game, come back and win, and they couldn't get a stop, right? So there's a little
Yeah.
caveat there.
Mhm.
Not to go too long with this, right? When it comes to Miami, their roster's stacked. I think they actually had a pretty weird offseason that no one talks about. They had a lot of turnover on that roster, and they had a lot of guys kind of move in and out. And when maybe the headlines were kind of a little bit more on the Bills, it probably should have been more on the Dolphins, right? Big year for Tua. He's not paid yet. He wants a long-term extension. He's not paid yet. Tyreek Hill's getting up there in age. This is a big year for Mike McDaniel as well. I'm not saying Mike McDaniel's on the hot seat. I'm not doing that, right? Made the playoffs 2 years ago. Made the playoffs again this year. But if they fizzle out again, it'll be 3 straight years of kind of crashing at the end, getting bounced early in the playoffs. Like Miami, month heading into the playoffs, had no business ever having to go to Kansas City in the wild card round, right? They should have won that division. They completely choke at the end, and then they lose it to Buffalo, right? So I saw Marcel Lewis, what's his name? Marcel Lewis.
Marcel Louis-Jacques.
Yes, thank you. He was on the Kay Adams show, and he was talking. He's used to be a Bills beat reporter. Obviously, he's a Dolphins, and he was talking about. They asked him, like, is it the Dolphins' division now to win? And his response was great. Until I see Miami, I'm paraphrasing for him, but until I see Miami beat Buffalo, and I agree with this, I'm gonna choose Buffalo every single time. And right, and it's kind of like you need to see Miami do it. Miami hasn't been able to do it. Josh Allen's 10-2 against the Dolphins in their career. I don't buy Tua. He wants a long-term extension. Clearly, Miami doesn't buy him either. They would have already given him the long-term extension, so they clearly don't buy him. And then when it comes to the Jets, quickly here, Aaron Rodgers, 40-year-old quarterback, coming off an Achilles injury with all his off-the-field fiascos, all that kind of stuff. The Jets have a good roster. Jets have a really good roster. Breece Hall's really good. Garrett Wilson's good. If Mike Williams can stay healthy, their O-line, they think they've kind of gotten it fixed. They've kind of mixed and matched some tackles there of Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith. Both are aging. Both can't stay healthy. I think that was kind of a mistake to rely on both those guys. Obviously, they drafted the kid out of Penn State in the first round, but obviously he's a rookie. Their defense is good. They lose Bryce Huff. They get Hassan Reddick, who hasn't decided not to show up to anything yet. But my biggest thing with the Jets, I don't buy Robert Saleh as a head coach. I think he's abysmal. I think he's a bottom 2, bottom 3 coach in the National Football League. And I think he's the only reason he's there is because Aaron Rodgers likes him. And I also don't buy Nathaniel Hackett as an offensive coordinator. And the only reason he's there is because also Aaron Rodgers. So I like the Jets. I think if Rodgers is healthy, they can be a playoff team. But Robert Saleh is not a good coach, nowhere near a good coach. And I think there's a little bit of limitations on defense, and there's some concerns still on that O-line.
I think there's legit concerns. I call stuff for face value. The Buffalo Bills have lost players. They have a lot of new players. They have a lot of young players. The New York Jets have a good roster. The New York Jets beat the Buffalo Bills with Zach Wilson at quarterback, with Nathaniel Hackett at offensive coordinator. The Buffalo Bills lost to Urban Meyer. They lost to Sean Payton. Right, so I do have some concerns about the Buffalo Bills, but at the same time, you have to be the man, you have to beat the man, right? And you have to go through Buffalo in the AFC East. This is where in my opinion, I get to see how great, what level of greatness is Josh Allen on? Is he the level of greatness where he's a great quarterback, but he has to have solid pieces around him to maintain his greatness? Or can he do like Tom Brady has done in the past and Patrick Mahomes has done in the past, where the skill positions or players around him, the talent around him hasn't been as good, but he was still able to maintain those levels of wins and still be victorious no matter who's around him. So what level of greatness is Josh Allen on? I think we're going to find out this season.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand some skepticism or some doubt there, but I don't think that right now I'm gonna go and buy into any of this because, they've had the chances and they haven't done it yet. So until they do, I'm not really, I'm not buying it. And
There's a lot of what ifs with the Dolphins and the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot, and there's a lot of what ifs with the Bills as well. But I think the one stable thing is that you have Josh Allen at quarterback, kind of what you were referencing, A-Rich. Like if Josh Allen's that guy, and I think he is, then I don't think the Bills should have anything to worry about.
yeah. All right, dude. What do you got for our next what if? We'll get
Yeah,
a couple
I'll
more
do
in here, and then
I'll do a sad what if or a down what if. What if Connor McGovern is not the answer at center? Right, obviously he was a left guard last year for the Bills, played pretty well. They're potentially probably moving him over to center. Maybe Cedric Van Pran plays center and they move back to McGovern. But I think the plan is right now for McGovern to play center and then David Edwards to play left guard. What if Connor McGovern is just not the answer at center and he's a guard?
that's interesting. I haven't thought about that much because, he's talked a lot this offseason now about how center is his natural position and
Yeah.
how he's, really taking on the role. And he mentioned how he kind of helped Mitch Morse even in calling some stuff last year. So I found that interesting, but I'm really high on Cedric Van Pran Granger. So honestly, if McGovern's not the answer at center, I think Cedric Van Pran Granger can do just fine. And if he can't, then they also have Will Clapp on this roster who can be in effect, probably at least enough to where if you had McGovern at left guard and Will Clapp at center, you can get by. So I think they do have enough there where if for whatever reason McGovern isn't cutting it, they can make do at least to have a chance at still being a Super Bowl contender.
I like it. I haven't given it much thought either. I just think that, okay, if we're going to give it thought, I look at it this way. If we're going to give it thought, it's because Pran Granger is outplaying him in training camp. So if Graham Granger's outplaying him in training camp, then that's a thought. Okay, are we going to go with the veteran here? Or are we going to slide him back over to guard and make this a seamless transition? What are we going to do here? But I don't even think that's the case either. I think Connor McGovern, even though he hasn't played center since college, I think that he's going to be a solid one for the Buffalo Bills. I think he's going to be able to anchor, hold his point of attack a little bit better than Mitch Morse. I believe he has the arm length and the physicality to do so, and I don't think he's as nimble in space, but I think he's good enough in space and to get to the second level to get the job done. So I think ultimately, Connor McGovern, this would definitely be his job to lose, the center position.
Fair point. I'll do another one. Someone brought up Von Miller, but I'm bringing up in a positive way. What if Von Miller returns to his 2022 form? Because I think people forget before he tore that ACL in that Thanksgiving game against Detroit, he had 8 sacks heading into that game. So he was a very productive edge rusher. But what if, I'm not saying we get prime Von Miller, because I don't think we ever see that again. But what if we get Von Miller from 2022 when he had 8 sacks, maybe projected probably to get 10, 11 sacks? So, A-Rich, I'll start with you. What if we get that Von Miller and he returns to that form?
If Von Miller returns to that form, then that would be, again, that would be great for the defense. That would be a trickle effect for the defense. Why? Because if you're getting to the quarterback, if you're bringing down the quarterback, then that doesn't give the quarterback a chance to scan and expose the safeties that we have. Right? We have safeties that we don't know who's the starter yet. They may go through some growing pains. We have Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard still transitioning, getting accustomed to playing with each other because of Matt Milano's injury. They haven't played with each other as much, right? So there could be some mishaps or mishaps in communication. But if you're getting to the quarterback, then that could eliminate a lot of things on the back end. So if Von Miller's coming back and he's some semblance of what he displayed in 2022, I think that would be a big upgrade for the Buffalo Bills. Especially we spoke about situational football, especially in those situational football moments when you have to have a play, when you have to have a sack, when a guy have to step up and make a play. We have our guy that we paid money for to make these type of plays back to form and healthy to make this type of play. So I think it could be a triple effect and a positive impact for the Buffalo Bills defense.
For me, it's simple. I think this defense becomes the best defense in the league if they have that Von Miller being as effective as he was in 2022. I think that's the missing piece for this defense. I think we have the other things, the other pieces that we need. We did fill in safeties. We have Rapp and Edwards with Cole Bishop being drafted. I think we have cornerbacks barring, injury because outside of the, Elam, Benford, and Douglas, we're not sure what we're going to get from like a Jamarcus Ingram, but the defense has great depth around it. And there may be some uncertainty in the secondary, but my uncertainty is erased by the coaching staff being so great at getting the best out of those positions. So the biggest uncertainty for me is, like I mentioned earlier, having that finisher, that one guy that you have to game plan for to stop when you're trying to execute your offense. And if Von Miller's that guy, now you have Gregory Rousseau, Ed Oliver, and AJ Epinesa as well, creating and growing and taking a leap that, Von Miller, like I said, being that dude makes this defense one of the best in the league, if not the best.
I'll do one more just for time constraints because we've been on here for an hour and a half. Do you guys want a positive one or a negative one? I'm going to ask, bro, I got two positive and one negative. What do you guys want, a positive or negative one?
What do you think, Rich? I like the positive things, but I want to see what you're saying. Up, you're
mute.
I did it again, didn't I? Making fun of Lance got me. I like the positive things too, but sometimes positives are negatives. So I'm gonna go negative.
Let's do it.
So
he's the founder, man. Let's go.
Nah, go ahead. Do the tiebreaker. Do the tiebreaker, Peter. Whatever direction you want to go.
Let's do negative, right? We kind of talked about this guy already. We talked about special teams, but we're taking it to a different level. What if Tyler Bass doesn't bounce back and he has a similar year to last year? What does that mean for the Bills?
I don't know if he makes it through the season, to be honest with you. If he can't get things going, if we're in week 8 and we're still having question marks there, I think that, they got to do something.
I think it's going to put more pressure on Josh Allen because now he's going to say, you know what, we can't make field goals. Now, not only do I have to get my team in position to score, I have to score a touchdown, do it myself. And, we know Josh Allen's style of play sometimes where he can force the issue. And when you're not being productive in certain situations, when you're probably supposed to be productive as a team, players see that. That's a natural instinct. We see Tyler Bass struggling as players. And, we want to uplift him, but our natural instinct is going to kick in. And when the shit hits the fan, so to speak, we're going to be thinking, you know what? Tyler Bass is struggling. I have to get this ball in the end zone. And there where mistakes may lie. So I'm hoping that that's not the case.
Yeah, I think if Tyler Bass has a bad year, it opens a lot of opens a lot of issues.
Pandora's box.
Yeah. It opens a lot of issues for the Bills. My other two things I was going to mention, two good things, was what if Dalton Kincaid emerges as a top 5 tight end in the National Football League? And then the other one, what if MVS turns into a legit deep threat for the Bills? So if you can answer that, feel free, obviously.
Well, I think Dalton Kincaid may already be that, but I think,
but I mean, like, proves it on the field almost. That's what
I agree. And the MVS discussion adds that element that, again, you have these certain nuances of the Bills roster now where you have those pieces of uncertainty, and that deep threat may be that piece of uncertainty for the Bills offense this year. And so having that locked down in MVS would just really allow these guys that go underneath really well, and Shakir and Samuel and, Kincaid to really one may be because of the other. So if MBS is that deep threat, may turn Kincaid into that top 5 tight end.
Yeah, I think you know, I think Kincaid in our minds, he's a top 5 tight end. I don't think media pundits outside of Buffalo feel that way. I've been seeing a lot of rankings. He's been getting slighted in a lot of these tight end rankings. So I think
Yeah.
he's definitely on an agenda to prove himself. And I believe Josh Allen has to look at him. He should be looking at Dawson Kincaid as the number one option for the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion. Dawson Kincaid should be the first. He's the wide receiver one for the Bills, and he should be that option. And I think he's going to be looked at as such. And because he's looked at as such, he's going to prove to be a household name this season, and he's going to be in the conversation this season because of his production and his play in top 5 tight ends of the season. MVS, if he can give us that deep threat, if he can give us that deep threat display when he's called upon and make plays when he's called upon, I think that can be key, right? I don't think we want to look at MVS as a go-to option or a consistent option, but I look at him kind of as a Dawson Knox. The less we use Dawson Knox, the more potent he can be in the offense. And I think the same way from MVS. When he does get his opportunities to get on the football field and display what he can display best, I think he can be able to take advantage of those opportunities. And he does provide and add another dimension within the Buffalo Bills offense.
Fair point. That's it for my what ifs.
Great stuff, guys. Thanks for your time. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you haven't done so, please like and share. Head over to the Built in Buffalo social media networks as well. Check out all the great content. Tomorrow, a great episode of the Founders Pod with Akeem and Dave Myers. And then we'll roll into our weekly schedule. Sunday is going to be Red Zone Report with Izzy, and Monday is Buffalo against the World. Tuesday is open. We're going to try a little something new this Tuesday night on the Built in Buffalo X page, so stay tuned for that. And then Wednesday is Going Deep, and Thursday is The Hoof. That's back to our turn here. Next week we will have back to the normal cast of characters with Ben Jupe and Scott Casson joining me, and I'm gonna break down a little bit of the Bills' schedule and start it going into looking at each individual opponent coming up for the 2024 season. So excited to get into that sort of series there that we're going to do leading up to the season. And I hope you all can tune in and find that interesting. Peter, thank you for your time, sir. Appreciate you coming back and spending the time with us. It's just like riding a bike, right? Like you never left. So we appreciate it. Tell us what you got going on and give people a little bit of, if there's anything you want to plug there.
Yeah. So you can follow me on Twitter at DiBiasi Peter. I still tweet about the Bills all the time. Try to get a couple tweets out about the Bills because obviously I saw some comment earlier about saying that you haven't seen me in a while. Didn't know if you were still a Bills fan. I'm never leaving. I'm never not going to be a Bills fan. Yes, that's what I was referring to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still a Bills fan, 100%. But yeah, I do a personal podcast called Talking Sports Podcast. You can just follow that on if you guys want. You can see it on my social media as well. But no, I always enjoyed coming back when you guys said when you shot me a text, and I was like, yeah, of course. If I always can make it work, I will always 100% come back and do an episode here or there. But no, you guys keep doing the thing. Of course, like I said, Monster comes on board as soon as I leave. That's just unfortunate, but no, that means you guys are going obviously to the moon, and I expect that. So you guys keep doing the great things, but no, I always appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, brother. And like Peter said, Monster Energy is the official energy partner of Built in Buffalo, and we'll be seeing you guys next week. You can find Akeem